Hi, I'm Steve Finn from Dr. Finn's Games, and this is the first installment of my video series called Dr. Finn's Reflects on Game Design. And I am starting this really to help independent game designers who are thinking about designing games, possibly using Kickstarter, to go this route that I've taken as an independent publisher. So this series, I have no idea how long it will be, how many installments I'll have. It could be a one-part series today. If people like it, maybe I'll do more. But the basic idea is that I will just reflect on things that I've learned as I've gone through this process of making games for the past over 10 years. And I've learned a lot, and so I just want to kind of tell you about that. It also could be just for people who like my games, or people who like games in general, just might find something interesting. So I'm just going to talk about different aspects of game designing from an independent publisher's perspective. Today's topic is how post-game manufacturing affects game design and decisions that you might make as you move forward. And by post-manufacture, what I mean is how you're planning on shipping it, how you are planning on boxing it. For me, a lot of my game decisions start with, I have a basic idea about what a game is going to be in the mechanics, but when I start getting into the details, a lot of it has to do with the box size that I plan to use. So I just want to give you a brief history of my start in the game publishing business. Now, many of you who know my name, if any of you do, would know me probably from this game called Biblios, which is published by Yellow, and they got the license from me a while ago, probably back in 2008, perhaps. I'd have to look at the exact date. And now they've been publishing this for almost 10 years. Now, this game started as a game called Scripts and Scribes, as you see here. These are two very early versions. I think this one came first. Now, for those of you who don't know anything about Dr. Finn's Games, I originally started where I manufactured these games myself. When I was living back in Seattle, I was reintroduced to the gaming hobby. I believe the first Euro game I bought was a game called Web of Power by Michael Schacht, and that got me got me into gaming. And then as I was playing more and more games, I decided, hey, I could give this a try. Back then, there weren't many people who were manufacturing cards for games, so my first step was to decide to make a card game. But then I tried to find game manufacturing, prototypes. So there's people out there now doing this kind of stuff, like Game Crafter and other places that make small runs of decks of cards. But 10 years ago, you'd be hard pressed to find someone that could make you a deck of cards. So when I discovered there was a kind of a gap in this, I said, oh, maybe I can learn how to make playing cards. So this is kind of a long story, but it is interesting, at least to me. So I spent a few months just trying to figure out how can you make cards. So looked into all the different various paper stocks, etc., and then I ended up striking this deal with a print shop in Seattle, and what they had was really high-end digital printers, like $40,000 machines. At the time, I do have a philosophy degree, so as you might expect, I wasn't rolling in cash. So I did have to find out some way that I could do this inexpensively. But what I ended up doing was making this deal with this print shop where I could use their high-end digital printer. I'd go right into their shop, and I'd bring in, I discovered this kind of paper stock that was still pretty good. It still has a little snap to it, but it's not coated. So if this gets wet, it's ruined. But it was a really nice printing job. And I found some good paper, some cardstock, it's coated cardstock, and I would get it in these sheets of, I think they were 12 by 18, and I'd be able to print up, it was 18 cards at a time on these sheets of 12 by 18. But then I also had to solve the problem, how do I get them cut? Like, am I gonna sit there? And I actually did for a while. But then I discovered a thing called Kluge letterpress, which was a way that people would cut. It was a letterpress. It was actually for printing, but could also be used for die cutting. So I had a die cut made that had 9 card shapes on it. So what I would do is print up these 12 by 18 sheets into 2 sets of 9. And I'll try to find a picture and include it in this video. But the basic idea is that the sheet would come off. After printing them, I'd cut them in half, so there'd be 9 up on both sides. And then there'd be this crazy machine from like World War II that would have little suction cups. Grab a sheet, pull it over onto this platform, the die cut would come down and cut it. Then I have these little suction cups come and grab it and pull the cards off. So I bought one of these for like $2,000 and put it in my garage. And so I ended up making decks of cards. And I ended up actually making like decks of cards for other people, and I got sidetracked on making games. But at some point I decided to come back to making a game. So the first point that I kind of want to make with this is how, for example, with scripts and scribes, my decision to do certain things with the game was based upon the fact that I was going to be manufacturing it myself. The most obvious thing was, for those of you who don't know the game, there is a board. This is the old version, right? There's a board here that has these dice that are put on it. So okay, so in this game there are victory points that are shown by the dice, right? And during the game, these get changed around. So for example, this blue suit, if someone could increase the value of that, they might turn it from 3 to 4, or this during the game might go down to 1. So some people might say, why are you using dice? And the answer to that question, why am I using dice to keep track of these points? Well, it seemed to me that the dice, I could buy a lot of dice and then just throw the dice in there. And rather than have, for example, lots of wooden cubes that slide up and down, it seemed just a lot easier to use this. Also, I had a hard time finding little wooden cubes back then. So a lot of people, again, like there weren't a whole lot of independent game designers, at least that I knew of, and these were readily available to me. So I was able to just go on, go to I think I went to a learning education store or something to buy tubs and tubs of dice. Around that time, I think I started to actually buy things online as well. My memory on this is a little hazy. But some people might wonder why, why use dice? Well, it turned out that it was purely for practical reasons. So that's why I have dice in this game. Now, does it actually affect the game design or gameplay? Not really, except for the fact that now, right, I'm limited. So this is actually a way that it does affect the game. Because I was using dice, I had to limit victory point values between 1 and 6. I guess I could have said you could pull the die off to make it go to 0, but there was no way to go up above 6. So in one way, that decision to use dice impacted the game design, and it turned out I think it was okay. So I'm not even sure what it would have been like if the values, for example, could have gone to 7. To be honest, I probably never even tried it out. And it could have been that I said, oh, I'll try these dice, and if that works, it works. It could have been that the victory point values were different, except for the fact that I had dice. So that's just one example of how the game that you're thinking about at the end, which has almost nothing to do with the actual design of a game, like the way the game's mechanics are played, etc., is influenced by something that you might not think of if for the first time if you go to start a game. But if you are going to be an independent publisher and you are also going to be doing your own shipping, for example, and you are going to be arranging it from China to come here, and then you're going to be doing various fulfillment services if you're going to be doing that yourself or looking in a fulfillment service, there's other decisions that you need to make. So I'll just talk about one more thing, or maybe I'll talk about two more things. The first thing I want to talk about is shipping. And this is just a very quick example of how shipping ended up affecting, in some sense, the design of a game. So early in my game publishing career, I was doing all of the shipping myself. So I discovered after going through a Kickstarter or two, or I guess it would have been probably after Gunrunners, I started shipping things, and I realized, boy, that shipping is expensive, and it still is very expensive. It's one of those most annoying things about being a game designer is shipping, I have to say. But so someone had, somewhere along the line, someone had pointed out to me these are priority mail from USPS, but there's a regional rate box, which you can't just get at the post office, but you have to go and set up a business account and then order these online. And these are especially good for shipping within your general region. So I live in the Northeast, so games that I shipped in the Northeast. I don't do a lot of my own shipping now, but I still sometimes do. So some of these on a Kickstarter, sometimes you might see these coming to you. And I put them in the box and sent them right on your way. So anyway, this is a regional rate box, and I just want to show you something about it. So here's the inside of the box. Here are two of my games. I've got Cosmic Run, notice, and I've got Biblios Dice. So just notice how two of these games, and then I can also throw in just a little extra cushioning in there with a sheet of bubble wrap. But it fits pretty much right in there. And that is purposely by design. Now what's interesting is how the design of the shipping size box ended up impacting the size of this box. And then once I knew what the size of this box was, I had to make decisions about what was going to be inside. Now for those of you who don't know much about Cosmic Run, for those of you who don't know much about Cosmic Run, I'm going to not hit that camera anymore. It has these tracks in it, and you get up like this. Now, originally, I wanted to make a board, a game board that folded, and the size of this just wasn't going to work as well if it was a folded board, and there was also some other considerations that I had to deal with. But the fact that I had that I had this size box ended up giving me the idea to have separate boards. And I'm out of print with Cosmic Run, so I don't have any of those punch boards. But you can see here I have a punch board from the other game, Biblios Dice. But that ended up setting up the punch board, which went on the inside. And then once I have a punch board, I have all sorts of other decisions to make, like how many victory points am I going to use, etc. How much money is going to be in the game. And so a lot of times when you're designing these punch boards to fit inside the boxes, you end up saying, oh wow, look at this. I can get some extra stuff on this punch board. Is there something I can do with that in the game? So the way this might have impacted, for example, Cosmic Run is as follows. During the game, people roll dice and these planets get hit. And my original plan was to just throw some sort of markers on here for when the asteroid hits the planet. But what was interesting for this decision is, how many times is it going to take to hit the planet before the planet is destroyed? So because of the number of these I could fit on the punch board, and because they're two-sided, I ended up just saying it's going to be 3 times. And then I say, all right, is this going to work? And sometimes, of course, a game design decision won't work, and so I have to find some other creative solution. But while I'm designing a game, I am actually thinking about the pieces that I have to use that could fit on the punch boards, that can fit inside the box, that can fit inside the shipping box. So this was someone came up with this idea and I loved it. It's just like, all right, if it's 3 hits before it's destroyed, you only need 1 token. 1 hit, 2 hit, and then on the 3rd hit, it's destroyed. So you don't need a 3rd token. But you do need some way to indicate that this is, that the planet has been destroyed, or, it would be helpful. So originally I was thinking, I'll put some, if it was a board, I'd be putting big tokens over this. But because it's not a board and they're separate punch boards, I came up with the idea that I'd just flip it over and then have black and white on this side. But that was an evolving decision that really started with the box size and came down to that. And now I just want to give you one more example. This is from my most recent game called Cog, which I'll just show you right here. This is the punch board that came from Cog, and this is just a small example of how, when you think about manufacturing something, how it's going to be all set up. So the way that this game here is, at the very end, after I had designed the whole punch board and everything and put all the letters in place, I realized I had 5 extra spaces. I decided to just use 4 of them. And so I came up with a neat little, what I think is a neat little variant. And I have the variant tiles here. There's no mention of it in the rule book. But it's just added 4 tiles, each worth 5 victory points, that you could throw in the bag if you want to give it a try, just to spice it up a little. It's really such a minor addition that it's not going to greatly affect the game. But hey, I had some extra space. I gave it a try, I play tested a couple times, and it's kind of cool. Occasionally you might pull out one of these and then you could get 5 points instead of getting a letter. So that's just an example where you could, at the very end, after you've designed a punch board, if you have some extra space, you could start saying, hey, what can I do with this, so that the people who buy the game get a little extra bonus, you might say. So basically, I'm going to wrap up now with just some concluding thoughts for people who are just beginning as game designers and as possibly independent publishers, or if you're thinking of running a Kickstarter. It's never too early to think about the box size and how you're going to fit things in that box. I get a lot of criticisms for the actual inserts, and I well deserved. I don't put a lot of time into inserts, but I am getting better. Cog, that just came out, has a great custom designed insert, so I think that's going to be good. But that's beside the point. My point really is just that you have to be thinking about the box, how things are going to fit in the box, but then that can impact the actual game design. Now, some people might say, oh, I can't believe that this kind of manufacturing decisions that you're making, that you allow them to influence the purity of the mechanics of the game, etc. But if you are an independent publisher, this is something you do have to think about. The size of the chipboard that you're going to be using. How many things can you fit in on it? These are things that are really important. We independent game designers don't have a whole ton of money to just throw out there to say, oh, well, we're just going to allow the game to develop completely as it should in some organic process. But these are decisions that you have to make about the game. I find it very interesting, and sometimes because of it, it ends up leading to, I think, cool little design kind of solutions. And it's an interesting part of this job. You might call it, if it's really a job, I'm not sure I call it a job, but it's more like a hobby for me. And it's kind of a cool thing about it. And that's really all I wanted to say. If you like this, or if you want to hear about any other aspects of my company or me or the game design or other things, just feel free to leave some comments or send me an email. I'm at drfins@gmail.com. You spell out doctor. And I'll get back in touch with you. Thanks for watching.